Last week, we climbed medieval society together, from knight to baron, duke, and king. Today, we're connecting the entire system. On Tuesday, we met the knight, a mounted warrior whose status came from service, training, loyalty, and military skill. Wednesday introduced the baron, a local lord controlling land, collecting taxes, enforcing laws, and overseeing daily life. Thursday focused on the duke, a powerful noble whose influence could stretch across regions and rival royal authority. Friday brought us to the king, the kingdom's ruler, though far less powerful than modern audiences often imagine. But these titles were never just honors. Together, they formed a system organizing power, wealth, protection, and obligation. Every rank connected land, military service, family alliances, economic control, and political authority throughout the medieval kingdom. Imagine a giant company where nobody could freely quit, relocate, negotiate contracts, or completely escape their position. Your rank shaped opportunities, responsibilities, legal rights, personal security, social expectations, and even the future of descendants. So today, we're building the entire medieval ladder, finally making sense of how this complicated system worked. At the bottom of today's ladder stands the knight, though knights were usually not considered major nobles themselves. They were trained warriors, expensive to equip, difficult to replace, and expected to fight whenever duty demanded. Surprisingly, armor didn't create freedom. More often, it created lifelong obligations, responsibilities, and dependence upon powerful lords. Unlike noble titles, knighthood generally lacked a direct female equivalent, though women still exercised influence and authority. Women gained power through inheritance, land ownership, marriage alliances, estate management, and maintaining important family relationships. Above knights stood barons and baronesses, powerful local rulers overseeing substantial lands, villages, courts, and resources. A baron controlled villages, collected taxes, enforced laws, maintained armed followers, and shaped nearly every aspect of local life. A baroness could also wield considerable influence through inheritance, administration, diplomacy, estate management, and family authority. Above them were earls and countesses, nobles controlling larger territories while serving important regional roles for kings. Think of an earl as a regional executive managing resources, influence, administration, military responsibilities, and territorial stability. Next came marquises and marchionesses, nobles trusted with dangerous border territories where rival kingdoms often collided. Border regions faced raids, invasions, and uncertainty, making experienced leadership especially valuable to the kingdom's survival. That constant danger increased their importance, because frontier nobles often became essential for defense, security, and stability. Above them stood dukes and duchesses, among the wealthiest nobles, controlling enormous territories, resources, and influence. Here's something surprising. Some dukes possessed enough wealth, soldiers, and loyalty to genuinely worry kings themselves. Their territories could contain prosperous towns, strategic castles, loyal followers, fertile land, and significant military strength. Duchesses strengthened dynasties through alliances, succession planning, diplomacy, estate management, and maintaining powerful noble networks. At the top sat the king and queen, symbols of unity, authority, legitimacy, and leadership throughout the kingdom. Yet royal power depended on nobles providing taxes, soldiers, loyalty, cooperation, and restraint from rebellion or resistance. Medieval rank wasn't decoration. It was the operating system holding together government, society, defense, and economic life. If medieval history finally makes sense, subscribe and join us as we continue exploring how this world worked.